Welcome. You are about to take a journey to a place of the divine love within with Deborah Beauvais on the Love by Intuition show. For the next hour, allow her to prepare you in becoming a magnet for a profound love-infused relationship by identifying and focusing on solutions through love. Awaken the light within and let your essence shine. And now, here's Deborah Beauvais on Love by Intuition, all part of the Dream Vision 7 radio network.
Welcome, everyone. Bonjour, mes amis. And yes, here I am, Deborah Beauvais, founder and owner of the Dream Vision 7 radio network. We are syndicated. We are Boston-based. So you can listen to us wherever you are in the world. You can ask Alexa to play Dream Vision 7 radio network. You can listen in the cars, wherever you are, and any podcast directory that you like to tune into, you'll find us there. Well, I am totally excited because I have one of our hosts as my guest, and her name is Kelli Melissa Reinhardt, and she is amazing. She has her own podcast right here with Dream Vision 7, and it's every Monday, 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. Eastern Time, and it's called Make Mental Health Matter with Kelli Melissa Reinhardt. And check this out, and while you're there, check out others, but really tune in to Kelli's because she's making a difference. Well, we all are on our station, but she's making a difference in an area that can be tough for people to have conversations about. So a little more about her. She's the founder of Make Mental Health Matter. She is a warrior for mental health, and she's dedicated her life to save as many lives as possible by normalizing the conversation around mental health and suicide. After losing her middle sister, who died by suicide in 2017, her name is Carrie, she founded Make Mental Health Matter, a mental health and suicide awareness nonprofit, which is on a mission to increase awareness, cultivate conversation, and provide education. Kelli is a TEDx speaker, Keynote speaker, mental health educator, author, and an ICF certified mental wellness coach. She has a BA in communication, minor in psychology, and she has many certifications. She's also an NLP master practitioner, and what's neat is she's certified as an adult, youth, and teen instructor for mental health first aid. We're going to be talking more about all her things that she's doing. That's why she's so special. But without further ado, Kelli, come on into the show.
Hi, Deborah. Thank you so much for having me. I think I need to shorten that bio a little bit.
That's okay. I like to share because people get an idea of what you're about, what your heart is about, and what you're doing. And that's very important. And we should put out the phone number. We have a toll-free number. Bob is in the house, and you can feel free to call. He'll put you right through. You can ask a question to Kelli or myself or make a comment. So we welcome your interaction with us. So first of all, I'd like for you to share, what was Carrie like?
Well, she was my middle sister. We had 5 girls growing up, and I am the baby of all of them. Yeah, so she was my middle sister on my mom's side. My dad had 2, my mom had 2, and then they had me. And she was actually the one, a blended family. She was the one that I grew up with the most because I lived with my mom, and Carrie was the closest in age to me on that side. So she was still in the house when I was younger, and really the person that I went to for everything. And I often joke now is that because I went to her a lot for cooking advice. And I used to burn everything. And so I always joke that my husband probably wishes she was still alive because I'm getting better, though. I'm getting better at cooking. But she was definitely that person that taught me how to cook and was my go-to, like, for everything, whether it was advice or whatever it was. So she was just an amazing human who also was a caregiver for a paraplegic, and she was a CPR instructor, and she also struggled, though, with her own mental health challenges and attempted suicide 6 other times, and it was,
wow.
Yeah, a rough road for our family, but I think it more so she just was misunderstood, and more really like I didn't fully understand what she was going through, so a lot of times I use those labeling words of crazy or over dramatic, and now I just realize, of course, with all my certifications, it was just me misunderstanding her as a human, but she was definitely one of those people that had tons and tons of friends, and so it was definitely unfortunate when she passed away for all of us.
For sure. I'm sorry to hear, and I know what that is a bit like through my niece, because we lost our niece through addictions, and that's one of the questions I wanted to ask you. But first, I want to talk about other things, but I do have a question that I'll save for at least a couple of minutes. Let's talk about the present challenges with mental health and substance abuse. What are they today? What do you see? Because you're entrenched into all the avenues of mental health today. I know you're in Colorado, but, all these issues, mental health and addictions and suicide, it's in every state of the country and beyond in the world.
Yeah, mental health is one of those, the buzzwords, right? Like everybody's starting to really actually talk about it, which is really, really great. But I think that what we need to understand is we all have mental health. Mental health is really truly our brain, but we don't all necessarily have a mental health challenge, as I call them. You can call them disorders, illnesses, disease, whatever word you want to use. But we don't all have a challenge, but we do all have mental health. And what we're seeing, especially outside of the pandemic, and again, it's a global challenge. It's not just a U.S. thing. It's not just a European thing, right? Like this is a global epidemic and experience that we're having, is that we noticed, especially during the pandemic, we're not meant to be isolated. So as mammals, as humans, we need connection. We need physical connection. We need social connection. And even the people that have that introverted energy, they also need to have connections with people. And when we were isolated and really taken away from all the normal things that we do in our life, we're finding that depression and anxiety and fear, all of those things are really starting to come out. And this isn't a new thing. It was just heightened or became more prominent after the pandemic, and we're still kind of seeing the rollout or the effects of it, because even though we were at one point, we're like, hey, I'm an introvert, right? Like I want to stay at home. I don't want to hang out with people, but we still had to have those connections at some point, and so we were still getting the connections. And then when we were not able to do that, that's when it really made things a little bit worse. And so now we're finally getting to a point that we're having the open conversations. We're trying to make this easier and better for ourselves and all the people around us, which is great. But we also have to realize that a lot of things, especially in the mental health space, come from potentially childhood experiences. There could be trauma that happened. Maybe there was abuse. Maybe there was, and traumas are going to be very different for everybody. We experience things very differently. So as we grow up, we start to try to maybe numb things, or we try to get out of the pain from what we're experiencing. And substances are those things that we potentially will turn to. And then it just kind of compiles on top of itself. So maybe it's something small, and then that doesn't really work very well. Then you add something else, and then you add something else, or you go to something stronger, and now you're in a full-blown addiction. And oftentimes we're just, a lot of science has been done around this, and I'm not a scientist by any means, but the research really shows that what we're not talking about is the trauma, whatever that trauma is that we experience. And as we move through life, what can help is to start talking about those traumas, start resolving whatever that was, so that we aren't stuck in addiction, or we're not stuck in suicidal thoughts, or we're not stuck in, like, say, our depression or our mental health challenge. And so there's a lot of different components, and it's really, really cool that just on a global scale, that we're starting to really research and have these open conversations across the board, which I think is the coolest part as we talk about mental health, because it really is as important as your physical health.
Absolutely. Now, we talk about the root cause, and I'm very much into that with that even for your physical health issues. You go back and you see what triggered you at whatever time, and then where you are today. And really, I think it's important to know that when it comes to pain, it's important to run to the pain instead of running away from the pain, because then you can see and understand where things started. But with that said, what about the component of that addictions, and some people even talk of suicide being, generational? Or, in the DNA from previous, the parents or whatever. So what do you believe with that, or how do you feel about it?
Yeah, I love, generational trauma or generational addictions. It's very, very fascinating to me, but I am a total nerd when it comes to the brain and how our brains function. So, there is a lot of research, especially now being done on generational trauma. So I am, like you mentioned, my modality is neuro-linguistic programming, which ultimately works with your conscious and your unconscious mind and your higher conscious self. And there's a lot of times, especially with my clients, that we identify that it's actually a generational trauma or something in their life that's not even theirs to hold on to. Like, an example is anxiety. So if you are somebody who feels like they have experienced anxiety since the day they came out of the womb, more than likely that is a generational trauma. It's something that is not really yours to hold on to, but it has now shifted into your being or your state of knowing. And it is very interesting that we can, through processes, clear out some of that. And that goes into even, substance abuse. So if you talk about alcoholism, there is scientifically I might say this wrong because but there is a DNA that changes, that you are more prone to become an alcoholic if you have a parent or somebody in your family line that was an alcoholic. So it does actually change your DNA, that you may be more susceptible, whether you ever touch a drink in your life or you dabble, you're more likely to become an alcoholic than, say, somebody that doesn't have generations prior to them that were alcoholics. So
right. I have read that as well. Yeah. I've read that as well, and it makes sense. And I think it's important to be aware of that as you become an adult, to kind of watch out for that, in a sense. Do you think, is there a difference, and everybody has a different point of view, which this is why it's good to have conversations to understand, but is there a difference from suicide and overdose? And the reason I ask that is because that's how our niece passed with the fentanyl, but she had, a dozen close calls before it actually happened, and she passed. So what are your thoughts, and what have you found out? Is there a difference?
So I talk about overdose as suicide. And the reason why is because, I truly believe, like, when you're using substances, you're either slowly killing yourself over time, or you can overdose, which kills you in that moment, right? And so I personally think that they should be all lumped together, and that should be part of the conversation that we're having really around suicide, is that overdoses are also, in my mind and the people that I talk to, we consider that as suicide.
Okay. And that makes sense to me, and yet you wonder because you don't know, and then something as strong as fentanyl, and we know that it's rampant and has killed many, many thousands of people, young ones, that it's so strong that it's almost impossible to stop once you start.
Yeah, I mean, fentanyl's its own animal because it is so powerful, and there are many more strands, unfortunately, out there that are even more potent. I actually just recently went through a fentanyl awareness Narcan training, and I learned a ton about fentanyl, and more so is back in the day, it was it was a prescription that people got for pain, like fentanyl lollipops or fentanyl patches, and that was a thing. And the guy that led our training, he actually talked about his mom being his first dealer because his mom was prescribed fentanyl patches and lollipops, and he's like, I gave her money for them, I went and sold them, and I kept them, and that was, he says it was his first dealer. And I know there's some states actually that are trying to make it legal, so like giving the medical-based fentanyl versus the street, because the street is so much more potent, it's not regulated, and that's really truly what's killing people. But there is a medical-based fentanyl, and so the dynamic just of street versus medical, right, that could be a whole different conversation. But yeah, it's scary, and it's a real problem that we're having across the globe, that we really have to educate ourselves and educate our families and educate our kids and talk about it versus shying away from having those conversations.
Right. Getting back to the root cause and knowing what that is, and I have to ask you, did Carrie, your sister, did she ever identify the root cause for her? So I believe it was really, there was a undiagnosed potential mental health challenge
My family and I have had these conversations since she passed, and what kind of came to the forefront is that we were thinking it was around BPD, or borderline personality disorder. And she was never diagnosed with that, but there were points in her life that she was diagnosed with certain things, and it was almost, I said that she was a hypochondriac because she was always sick, or there was always another diagnosis, or there was always another thing that came up. And the challenge for our family, though, is every single time she would attempt, we'd kind of go through the same cycle of she would call us, we would know that we need to call 911, they'd take her in, put her on a hold, she'd say what she needed, and they'd release her. And at one point in time, she went into a mental health facility, but she was really only there for maybe a week. And I was like, I don't think that's very helpful. And so I think it was just a lot of underlying mental health challenges that we didn't even know about, nor did she. But also she was diagnosed with MS before she passed. So I do know that she was in a lot of pain, like constantly with her body. And I think she just mentally, emotionally, and physically was in pain and didn't know how to get out of that pain. And that's what ultimately set her down the road of she stopped taking her medication, and which was like antidepressive medication. She had a really good formula that they had put together for her, and towards the end, which we didn't know until afterwards, a lot of these things have come out after, but she had stopped taking her medication, and I think she was just going downhill from there, and she didn't know how to make the pain end, and suicide was where it ended up.
Okay. Well, that brings us to our first break. Everyone stay with us, more with Kelli Reinhardt, and how to have conversations, normalize the conversations around mental health and suicide. So stay with us. When we come back, the phone is open for you to call, and it's 833-220-1200, 833-220-1200, and as mentioned, Bob is in the house, and he will put you straight through. Okay? Back in a moment.
Experience a different yet profound healing with Reconnective Healing. Includes yet expands beyond any and all known forms of energy healing. The Reconnective Healing spectrum is comprised of the full healing and evolutionary continuum of energy, light, and information. It allows for healings that are not just physical, not just mental, not just emotional, yet go beyond that to bring healing that includes the evolution of your very being and essence. Deborah Beauvais, trained and certified by world-renowned Dr. Eric Pearl, offers appointment hours at Seekonk Family Chiropractic in Seekonk, Massachusetts. For questions or to set up both distance or local sessions, call Deborah at 508-431-1959. Again, 508-431-1959. Or go to lovebyintuition.com. That's lovebyintuition.com.
Calling all authors. Have you been considering an audiobook? Well, look no further. Come take advantage of Dream Vision 7 Radio Network's unique in-house audiobook production, which includes benefits and bonuses from our radio station. Let our knowledgeable staff guide you to create the audiobook you've always dreamed of without breaking the bank. Check out our full one-stop service from A to Z, including the ACX process. Schedule a free consultation by calling 508-226-1723. That's 508-226-1723. Or go to DreamVision7Radio.com.
After narrowly surviving the attack on Sandy Hook Elementary, first grade teacher Caitlin Roy DeBellis was left searching for answers that would never come. Eventually, she chose to focus on questions that could be answered. How do I make sure this tragedy doesn't define us? How do we get our control back? Those two questions led her to found the 501c3 nonprofit organization Classes for Classes. When gifts poured into their classroom, she decided they would help someone else by paying it forward and being kind. This developed into a social network which allows K-8 classrooms to connect so that every student in the United States can learn these crucial lessons. Classes for Classes' mission is to build students' social-emotional intelligence by connecting them to care. All C4C projects are crowd-funded. Any teacher in the U.S. can visit classesforclasses.org. That's classes, the number 4, classes.org. Sign up today.
Delight your kids with an enchanting journey by reading the Paper Doll Kids children's book by Deborah Beauvais and Janine Sullivan. There's even a catchy tune, Kids for Love Song, produced by Bob Sherwood and sung by kids just like yours. The story weaves around 7 paper dolls flying around the world doing good deeds as they bring important attention to our endangered animal friends. There's even a magical ring with a universal message. Kids become interested in service projects, action through compassion, and planting seeds that nurture positive change. The Paper Doll Kids and Kids for Love Song are a production of the Kids for Love Project. Get the book now on Amazon Kindle and the song on CD Baby or iTunes.
This is Dream Vision 7 Radio Network, uniting mankind with universal love. Our shows are created from the heart, bringing each listener to a place of divine enlightenment. Breathe, relax, and enjoy. Let life flow.
And we are back, and our guest is Kelli Melissa Reinhardt. She is host of, she has a podcast, and she also has that podcast with us, Dream Vision 7, and it's Mind Health Matters. Oh, I'm sorry, that's Dr. Bernie's show. Make Mental Health Matter. Make Mental Health Matter, and it's every Monday, 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. Eastern Time. She has an extensive website with all kinds of information. There's workshops, there's help for those that are in need immediately or looking for help along the way. She's the TEDx speaker. Anyway, go on her site. It's makementalhealthmatter.org. It's a nonprofit, makementalhealthmatter.org. And you can find so much information there. And it's an education in itself, just the website alone. So we're back and we're discussing to have normalized conversations around mental health and suicide. And if you missed the first portion, do hear the entire show because Kelli talks about losing her sister to suicide. Another question that I had in mind was, and I always feel, and I've said this before, that I believe most of the human race has an issue with self-worth. Do you feel that having self-worth, a certain level of it or not, plays a part in mental health and addiction?
That is a wonderful question, and I absolutely believe that because I hear that from so many people in the mental health space. If they're struggling, a lot of people just believe that they're not worthy and that they don't deserve to have whatever it is that they need. And oftentimes that sets the negative spiral. So if it's, I always hear the phrase, if bad luck didn't happen to me, or if I didn't have bad luck, I wouldn't have luck at all. And that's a phrase that we often hear, and it's because people don't feel like they're worthy enough. They don't have what it takes, quote unquote, to have money or have the happiness or have insert whatever that is that they really truly want. And so, yeah, I think the feeling of not being worthy or not being worthy enough is definitely, there's a lot around that, especially when we talk about mental health challenges.
Yes, I agree with that theme. Just with my family and the the community we're in, the holistic community, so I think there's something to that. And then my other thought is, can self-love heal addiction? And I say this because, and I'm going to speak about one of our family members in the sense that has been addicted to alcohol and such her whole entire life. I shouldn't say that. When she was 15 is when it started, and where she is now is over 60, and still has she relives on a daily basis from her childhood and the things that had happened. It's almost like she needs to hang on to that. And then naturally she doesn't have self-worth and feeling like she's valued. So it's interesting, and I don't think she wants to get better. And that's the frustrating part. Through all these years, we've tried and tried, but she's so stuck in that. And I think she's going to remain stuck. Is it a bad thing? Is it right or wrong? Who knows? But it's not healthy if she wants to thrive on the earth. And she's really doing everything she can to destroy herself. So it's you feel hopeless. You feel helpless because you've tried everything, but really it's up to her. How do you feel about that? And my thinking is, if she loved herself enough, just a little more, maybe she could beat this thing.
Yeah, I think self-love has a lot to do with everything, right? I think that a lot of people, so there's different words that you can use for that, whether it's self-love or self-care or love for self, right? Whichever way feels the best for the audience member. And I think it has a lot to do with where we're at, because we do get stuck in these loops of what happened to us in our childhood, and it kind of replays over and over and over and over. And I often hear from people, especially that are struggling, that they don't identify with loving themselves. That's not something that they can really, it's not a concept that they can understand, because maybe in their childhood they were told that they weren't worthy, right? Or they weren't good enough, or they just had to suck it up and get over it, and talking about their problems is not okay, right? Like, we use all these words, and I don't think we realize how much it affects somebody and their internal self-love and their internal confidence, right? And so I think it does. There's a lot there, and then we try to mask it, and that's where the substance abuse comes in, is we're just trying to mask whatever we're actually feeling inside and numb it out the best, or the only way maybe that we know how to do it. But absolutely, I think that self-love is one of those pieces that when people are ready and wanting to work on that aspect, can change a ton of things for them. And like you said, they have to be willing to do it for themselves, and you can't ever make somebody do something. And I kind of reflect back to the phrase of, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. And it's the same way with humans. We can't make them better. We can't love them better. We can't force them to do anything. They have to be the ones that take the step. And I had to learn that a really hard way with, I helped some people through crisis last year, and I gave and gave and gave and gave and gave, and I was like, here's a resource, connect with this person, how can I get you food? And I was doing everything that I could, and it came down to I couldn't help anymore because I was so drained from trying to help them, but they had to want to help themselves, and I had to learn that the hard way, and that's ultimately what it comes down to. So we have to protect ourselves too.
Yes, yes, well said. And I never thought of it when you said they don't identify with self-love. I never thought about that in that respect. And you make a good point. There may be people that just don't have the ability to identify with self-love. So that's something for me to ponder. I thank you for that. So let's talk about preventative. You have coaching assistance. You have all kinds of things. You also talk about the arts, where you have film, art, music, travel. These are powerful tools to inspire empathy and, and help people channel that creativity. Because when we are in that creative realm, we are in the highest place where we feel good about ourselves and the world. So talk about those types of things that can help someone. And my other thought is it's hard to start with someone that's 50. It's better to start with adolescents and even younger than adolescents to get them using their creative skills, which will inspire them to love themselves.
Yeah, my whole goal in life is to try to get people to be proactive versus reactive. And I know that goes a lot with my experience with my sister and being more on the reactive part versus the proactive part. But there are so many things that can benefit our mental health and benefit our brain. And like you just listed off, right, the music, the art, the travel. We do a film festival that really gets more into that conversation, but it's showcasing different, it's for mental health and suicide prevention, but it's in such a creative way. And all of those things can help, especially even the classes that we do. We do a lot of prevention classes to teach people how to identify the signs and the symptoms of a mental health substance abuse challenge or suicidal ideation. And that prevention is what ultimately can help save a life if you want to get yourself educated. So we work a lot in the realm of prevention. We do have a couple things in the intervention. So if you have somebody that is having thoughts of suicide or they're in that moment right at that time, we do also offer things in the intervention space, and then even the postvention, the unfortunate when somebody dies, whether it is by overdose or suicide, and we do have other postvention things, but the prevention is the one that I am the most passionate about. And like you said, with youth, we can really change the direction of a youth. I mean, it literally could take one trusted adult for a youth to change their whole trajectory of their life, or one person to say, hey, I noticed you, I see you, I notice you're struggling, how can we get you help, or let's go get you help, or whatever those words are that we're using. But it could honestly really take one person to make an impact in a youth's life, and that's why it is so important that we start early. And I know, at least for me, I'm a mom, and I have a 9-year-old, and we have lots of conversations about things that I never, ever, ever thought that we would have conversations at this young. but I know how important it is, and I know that he knows that I'm a safe space that he can come to if he needs to, but not every kid has that, and so we have to recognize that and open up that safe space and create the conversations and not shy away from them, because that's really, truly what's ultimately going to save our future, is having those conversations now versus waiting till they get older and then they start dabbling in things like substances, and then it takes on its own form. And so if we can get to them when they're young, that's how we're going to, as a globe, as the world, right? That's how we're going to save our future, is by inserting prevention.
Right. And I think it's so important to, as we're talking, to work with the kids, whether they're your own or in the family or circle of friends, because if you have a child, and I was actually one of them, where you just kept everything to yourself, and you didn't speak unless someone spoke to you, those kinds of things, and there are plenty of kids out there like that. And if they're not allowed to speak their mind or not allowed to open up a conversation and not be ridiculed for it, once they get in the habit of openly talking about whatever it is they want to talk about, then they're used to having that open conversation. So when something that's heavier or something that's puzzling to them, they'll feel comfortable to open up because they're used to talking. So I think it's important to get the little ones having conversations about whatever they would like, to keep that ball rolling, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I'm thinking of that, and then because I think it's natural for a lot of kids when they're in that 12 to 16 range that they clam up. And you ask them, you have a conversation or try to, and it's a two-word answer instead of elaborating the sentence with more information, or whether it's about a dress or a TV show or a problem at school. So it's, so all those kinds of things roll around in my mind of how we can open up someone, that have them feel safe so that they feel comfortable to talk about whatever they would like.
Yeah, it's just starting early, right? Like having the conversations. I kind of go back to, I had to have the gun safety conversation when my son was 4, and I was like, 4? Like, this feels way too young. But we still had that conversation, and so I just continually keep him part of the conversation. And I've had parents and people tell me that I tell my son too much, and I'm like, but if I'm not telling him, somebody else is going to tell him, and I would rather him like it come from me than his friends. So yeah, I don't think it's ever too young to just open up the conversation and see where it goes.
Yes. And then they're getting more factual instead of hearing it from someone that may have heard something else that may not be true. And that, again, that they have a safe place, and certainly your son has a safe place with you. And but then again, not everyone has a person that that they feel safe with. So it's really there's a lot of complexities, as you will know, because you're in this specialty of helping people. So how do you instill hope when there's a challenge? What would you say to parents and families out there that has someone or more than one person that has addictions, maybe has attempted suicide more than once, how do you hold hope? And what can, you can't force people, as we spoke a little earlier. What would you say to the parents and the family?
I oftentimes just tell people, I know it's hard. Like, these are not easy conversations to have. I understand. I've been having these conversations for 6 years now, right? And I'm not perfect at it. But I also believe that we can open up the conversations, and maybe if you're not the right person, that's okay too. Maybe you're in a space yourself that you're struggling, and if you are trying to help somebody else, it's probably not going to be very helpful. So we also have to go back to that, like, self-care and understand if we're in a place that we can have these open conversations. And if we're not, there's lots and lots of people out in this world that are trained or that can help just guide the conversation. I know you mentioned it earlier, but on our website, there's some really great language that you can possibly have, and utilizing open-ended questions, and then bringing in others, potentially professionals, to be able to help really have those conversations, because you don't have to do it alone. And I think that's the message that I want people to know, is that you don't have to do this alone if you don't feel like that's what you want to do. And there are lots and lots of people out in the world that do want to help. And if you need access to those people, I mean, we have trusted resources on our website, but ultimately there's probably somebody in your community that knows how to facilitate the conversations, and it can be really, really hard, and I completely understand that. But there's also some tools that we can start to implement, or words that we can use that will help to open what I like to say is open the onion, or unpeel the layers, and make it a little bit easier to have the conversation.
Very good. Well, it's past our break. I'm sorry. I'm really in this. So we'll take a quick break, Bob, and we'll be back in a moment more with Kelli Reinhardt.
Take a journey to a place of the divine love within with Deborah Beauvais on the Love by Intuition Show, Monday through Friday at 6 p.m. and 6 a.m. Eastern. Our message is love in the purest form. The light within us all is a guide to recall our beginning, to learn to love self and humankind, and to feel the higher power of our own divinity. To attract love, one needs to be love. Come join us and step into this glorious vibration called love.
Delight your kids with an enchanting journey by reading the Paper Doll Kids Children's Book by Deborah Beauvais and Janine Sullivan. There's even a catchy tune, Kids for Love Song, produced by Bob Sherwood and sung by kids just like yours. The story weaves around 7 paper dolls flying around the world doing good deeds as they bring important attention to our endangered animal friends. There's even a magical ring with a universal message. Kids become interested in service projects, action through compassion, and planting seeds that nurture positive change. The Paper Doll Kids and Kids for Love Song are a production of the Kids for Love Project. Get the book now on Amazon Kindle and the song on CD Baby or iTunes.
Are miracles real? Can you move from mayhem to miracles? 30 prominent authors say yes as they share their high fives and down lows of challenges, abuse, addiction, and love. Experience hope, the magic elixir of miracles, through the personal stories of New York Times best-selling authors James Redfield, Dr. Bernie Siegel, Sister Jenna, Reverend Temple Hayes, and many more. If you like bestsellers, chaos to clarity, and crappy to happy, you'll love crying and laughing through mayhem to miracles. Sacred stories of transformational hope, available now on Amazon and in bookstores worldwide.
It's a child's job to play, to learn, and to have fun. It's an adult's job to keep them safe. Did you know that 1 in 4 girls and 1 in 6 boys will be sexually abused before the age of 18? Every day, families enter the Children's Advocacy Center because a child's courage to tell someone what happened to them. Keeping our children safe starts with a conversation. This is Michelle Aranger, Executive Director of the Children's Advocacy Center. Learn more on how to keep your child safe. Visit cacofbc.org. This message made possible by the Fall River Rotary Club.
This is Dream Vision 7 Radio Network, uniting mankind with universal love. Our shows are created from the heart, bringing each listener to a place of divine enlightenment. Breathe, relax, and enjoy. Let life flow.
And we are back. There's only a few minutes for you to call in, but you still could do that. It's 833-220-1200. You know, one of the things that I had thought to ask you, Kelli, particularly because of mental health and addictions, do you think that faith would help? Not necessarily, you know, a religion, but faith in a higher source. God, whatever you want to call it, but to believe that there's more than just you and the next door neighbor.
Yeah, so whatever you want to call it, right? Like the universe, spirituality, if you actually have a designated faith-based church or community that you are a part of, the biggest thing that I think is the positive especially when we talk about spirituality, is that the community. And oftentimes when you are part of a faith-based community, you have those connections. And I think that's what makes it so powerful for people, is because now you have others around you to be able to support you whatever you're going through, but also maybe you're not a part of a church, or maybe it's just more of a spiritual or mindset shift. I like to call it the universe. Whatever that is, yeah, it's very helpful in knowing that there's something beyond us. There's something that can potentially help shift wherever we're at in life. And I know, at least for myself, that's been a part of my journey, although I was born and raised in a very strict religion, but then chose to kind of go the opposite way. But I kind of I did come back to, like, spirituality. I choose to know that the universe is in my favor and that it is there guiding me to a higher power. And I know you and I have talked a lot about angels and numbers, and which is something that has really been brought to my attention after my sister passed. I didn't see numbers, but now I see them like 222, 444, 555, 666, right? Like I see the continual of numbers, and I know that there's something beyond us, and I know that those that are really truly struggling, they might have lost the faith in whatever it was, and so if they can reconnect into whatever that means for them, I think that is a really great place for people to be. And if you can find a community that supports you in whatever that is, I think that's going to help 10 times more to have those connections.
Yes, because if you do believe in something higher than yourself, you actually experience different things that prove that there's something higher. And it helps, even if you're alone, even if you live alone, it does help you to know you're not alone. You're not completely alone. You can call upon, the higher source, the angels, your guide. You can call upon and you can feel the difference. So I agree with you. I think that's there's a disconnection there with a lot of people that prone to addictions and mental health. Not everything, but there's a piece there that I think could help many people if they could reconnect with that source. And I'm not talking about going to church or anything of that sort unless you wanted to. But to just have that relationship with yourself and your higher source, even your higher being, because we're spiritual, we're everything. We're human, but we're spiritual. That's our base, is spiritual. So if we could connect with that, I believe it would, with all the other pieces that we've talked about, with preventative and assistance that you have, it can turn someone, or it can save a life. So we have come to the end of a show, and I want to say to you from the heart, thank you for every life that you have saved. And with the work that you have been doing in the last 7 years, it has made a huge ripple in this universe. I know it, I feel it, and I thank you for your tireless work and commitment to that. In honor of your sister and in honor of all our sisters and nieces and brothers and all the people that every family usually has. And it's all about breaking that cycle of trauma. I truly believe that with the faith and So hopefully, do you have hope that in your lifetime you will see a difference, or you must be seeing a difference from your day-to-day work?
Yeah, there's been a huge shift, and thank you so much for having me on here. I love to have the open conversations, and there's a definite giant shift that's happening in the world that I know and I can see that we're going to get to a better place. There is a lot of hope, and there's a lot of possibilities out there. So I just appreciate you having me on today and having these conversations.
You're welcome, Kelli. It's been an honor to have you. And so everyone, go on her site, makementalhealthmatter.org. Go on the site. Read up on all these things. Share it with other people, especially if you know families that have a member, regardless of how young or how old they are, that have an issue. It can help. Just a phrase could help open someone's mind and heart to say, yes, I want to do better. I want to get better. So go there and learn and get involved. There's things that you can do. You can donate, give donations, because that's how Kelli's organization will grow and thrive and can help more people beyond what she's doing now. So I thank you, and until we come together again, all of us in unity consciousness, au revoir.
Are you seeking a clearer path to love? Then tune in to the Love by Intuition show next week, all designed to your highest good. To contact Deborah Beauvais, owner of Empowered Connections, call her at 508-226-1723. That's 508-226-1723. Or link on to lovebyintuition.com. Remember, we are all one, and we are all part of the miracle of love.
This is Dream Vision 7 Radio Network, uniting mankind with universal love. Our shows are created from the heart, bringing each listener to a place of divine enlightenment. Breathe, relax, and enjoy. Let life flow.